In 2008's American Violet, a young black mother is falsely accused, arrested, and forced to fight a corrupt legal system designed to break her.
This isn't just a movie, it's a harrowing expose of real-life injustice that still happens today.
When the government uses fear, lies, and intimidation to destroy lives, who really has the power?
Let's delve into this shocking, infuriating, all too real story.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. The executive producer of this video is Brian B31, who requested this film through Axiom Amnesia's Deep Dive on Demand program that we'll tell you more about later.
There will be spoilers, so if you don't want them, then you might want to go ahead and head out.
Just hop on off the call. So let's first talk about the cast in American Violet. We have Nicole Beharie playing Dee Roberts. Tim Blake Nelson is David Cohen. Will Patton is Sam Conroy. Charles S. Dutton, Rock. You know,
Rock.
He was
he was Rock.
He was Rock. Who else was
Emerson? Rock Emerson.
Yeah.
Who else was he? He was the daddy on Menace to Society, Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Sharif's father.
And in this movie, he plays Reverend Samuels. Also, Alfre Woodard, the amazing Alfre Woodard, who we just watched a movie yesterday, Extremities. She was in that movie as a young woman in the 1980s. But anyway, Alfre Woodard plays Alma Roberts. She is the mother of the main character in this film. Then we have Michael O'Keefe, who plays Calvin Beckett. Paul David Story plays David Higgins. And Exhibit, y'all remember Exhibit, right? From back in the day, and I guess now too.
From back in the day.
Pimp My Ride, right? Exhibit is Daryl Hughes in this movie. And other things you should know about this film is that it is based on a true story, although the town that it supposedly happens in is like fictional, and I think names and stuff have been changed.
Yeah.
But the story itself that this happened is indeed true.
Yeah, and when it came out, you know, they were going to show it and stuff, and you know, all of the bigots in the town were mad. You can't show this. This is not real.
This didn't happen here. It's not what really happened. So, yeah. But, you know, this is how you got to expose. You got to bring sunlight to these bigots and folks who don't behave appropriately. So first, let's do a summary. And as you know, we always do our summaries of the film in Act 1, 2, and 3. In Act 1, we get the lay of the land. We understand who the players in the film are. Act 2 tells us what is the story, what's going on, and what's the problem. And then Act 3 gives us a resolution to the problem that was presented in Act 2. And also, it's the end of the film. In Act 1, we'll call this Wrongfully Accused. Set in a small town in Texas in 2000, American Violet follows Dee Roberts, played by Nicole Beharie, a young single mother of 4 struggling to make ends meet. Her life takes this devastating turn when police raid her housing project and arrest her, falsely accusing her of being part of a drug ring. And the charges stem from a corrupt district attorney, Calvin Beckett, who's played by Michael O'Keefe, who relies on coerced testimony rather than actual evidence. Dee is pressured to take a plea deal to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but doing so would label her as a convicted felon, destroying her future and taking away her right to public housing and employment. Then in Act 2, we get fighting the system. So despite the threats and pressure from prosecution, Dee refuses to plead guilty to a crime that she did not commit. And with the help of the ACLU and civil rights attorney David Cohen, who's played by Tim Blake Nelson, she files a lawsuit against Beckett, exposing the racially biased drug sweeps that target Black communities. As the case gains traction, Dee faces intimidation, community backlash, and fear of losing her children. And she also struggles with the emotional toll of standing up against a system that is designed to silence people like her. Her charges are eventually dropped, but she vows to continue the case because she wants to stop this DA from his corrupt practices. So then in Act 3, is justice served or not? During a heated courtroom battle, Dee and her legal team exposed the DA's corrupt practices, proving that he routinely fabricated cases to secure convictions. Dee wins her case, setting the precedent for the future civil rights lawsuits. And the film, however, ends on this bittersweet note, reminding viewers that the systemic racism in the justice system remains an ongoing fight. Dee walks away with her dignity intact, her freedom, and proving that one person's courage can actually spark change. But one of the things that happened in the end was the judge was like, "But I'm not going to remove him, right? I'm not going to remove him.
Yeah.
The voters will have to vote him out."
Right. Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors. Subject to availability and terms apply.
But it's just a lot of risk, right? So one of the big issues here is about plea deals, right? So what happens when, we'll get to it, when someone pleads, like this woman was taking a lot of risk because it's very easy to just say, well, just plead not guilty, when you could be facing who knows how many years and whatever other consequences.
And people who don't understand the system will oftentimes say stuff like, oh, well, an innocent person has nothing to worry about. Or why did you plead guilty if you were innocent? So therefore, if they pled guilty, they must be guilty. And obviously, we know that with coerced plea deals, people wanting their freedom right now, and all of the power that the system has over just the individual, there are a lot of reasons why you might plead guilty. Yeah. She spent 21 days in jail waiting to be able to be bonded out to begin with.
Yeah. And if you think 21 days ain't long, think again.
So that's a tough situation to be in. And think about this. That was 21 days in jail before anything else happened. But she would have been facing jail time if she went to trial and then hoped that she would win. Like, it's always a risk. And we have all of these factors that feed into whether you're going to be found guilty or not. You might not have done it, but they say, so they're in this film, their whole thing about the drug raids was, oh, well, we did extensive research into this, and
I just heard this about some Venezuelans.
Yeah,
that's the White House press secretary, I believe it was, right? Maybe it was somebody at the Pentagon.
No, it was the White House press secretary. I think I remember the way.
Oh, and they asked the question, and they were like, oh, it was a bunch of people. And they were like, yeah, we did investigations.
Well, they said, well, where's your proof that they did what you said? Because the issue there is that they are members of
a gang.
These gangs that they have labeled certain type of organizations that rhymes with orist.
Yeah.
Right. And so and they were saying, where's your proof, right? The press has a right to ask for the proof. Duh.
And all the people in the administration, they were just like, yeah, we just have, we just know why, and we just have information. But then they basically trying to say that, it needs to be classified how we classify these people as terrorists. Right. But Venezuela said they got the list of the names and stuff, and not one of them was a member of this defunct gang that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. And so, but the thing is, the press secretary she says, well, we've got to learn to have confidence in our law enforcement people who say this and that. But, like, come on, let's keep it real. If there is a history of lies, maligning people, pressuring people to plead, all of these other things, then why should I believe what comes out of your mouth, But yeah, so that's the same type of thing. And what they were doing is they would get you locked up, which is leverage in and of itself, because they know you want to get out. They know you don't have any money. They raided a housing project, right?
Yeah.
So the people who are there, they don't have a lot of money. They don't have money for high-powered lawyers.
Right, and if you lose your job, then you really don't have it.
Which is what happened to the character in this film, right? So her mother had to go and try to get her bail reduced. The way she got her bail reduced was by getting like this petition and getting people who knew her to sign it to say, hey, I know she hadn't been involved in any type of activity. with drugs and stuff.
which means you're not innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
Right? It's the assumption. And I always have issue with that when it's like, hey, because of the nature of the allegations, then the person who is accused should be treated a certain way. And I'm like, wait, but what if they didn't do it? Why should I assume that they did it? Place conditions on them with the assumption that they did this thing.
And to me, the only thing that should matter is whether or not you are a likely flight risk. It shouldn't be, pre-trial incarceration and all of that. It should not be punishment. It should not be made to be leverage. But we've seen all of these DA offices.
But, the Eighth Amendment is just about that you should be able to get out. It should be reasonable. Right? The things where they're trying to be like no bond or have excessive bonds is so that people can't get out, which is to me contrary to the Eighth Amendment. But you know what I'm saying? It's supposed to be that you can get out, and it's just commensurate with, like, let's say somebody who makes 25,000 versus somebody who is worth 25 million should have different bonds, but it shouldn't be that the person who makes 25,000 can't get out because they can't afford a bond.
Right.
But they place it, hey, you got to pay a $2 million bond, and the person can never pay that.
So they're automatically just going to be punished in the process.
Yeah.
So if you want to get out, and we saw it in the film where there were women who were trying to get out, they were like, hey, I got to get back to my kids.
Yeah, so you just plead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it happens a lot. So I think it's like, with this movie, it's a few issues that they're trying to talk about, right? So do we start with, is it a good movie or not, or do we get into that just basically on what we think about these issues that they portray in the film? I think it was realistic, even though there are aspects that I question about the process. But I do think when you have so-called small towns, they kind of have this sort of autonomy where they kind of decide how that processes go. Because part of the issue too was, CPS got involved. Right. And then basically she had a hearing in front of the actual DA, instead of like a judge or maybe a council or board or sort of thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they can structure some certain things in their jurisdiction how they want it to go. Maybe. But that's the part of the issue, because not to relate everything to what's going on nowadays on the federal level, is that's why you have certain federal agencies and stuff to try to keep some sort of standards, and you create these different laws and stuff at the federal level to create the different standards, right?
Yeah.
On how things should go. So like if there's issues with children and stuff, then there may be a department or agency that sets the standards on how you mitigate these or litigate these issues of child welfare. And you can't just maybe say, hey, the DA is the person who decides something. So, but other than that, I think it was pretty accurate from things I've known and people I know, and, that this is a very likely situation. And of course, it's based on a true story.
Well, one of the things that is mentioned in the film is that like 95% of the cases were pled out instead of going to trial. So if you think about like a conviction rate where like 95, even 80%, even 75, 3/4 of the people are pleading out, they're not going to trial. And I feel like that is something that we saw, like a lot of people, and this is just so you guys can relate to it better. A lot of people watch trials on like YouTube and whatever. One of the more recent ones that was long was the YSL trial. And
yeah, with Young Thug.
Yeah. And how we saw pressure being applied for people to plead. And ultimately, even though they got like halfway through the case, or, like a lot of people pled out even during the case, right? Because they realized, hey, I'm taking a huge risk on my freedom. I've already been in for this amount of time. And, so like people are navigating whether they're going to walk away with a felony or not. But another important thing to, point out is just that this is how the system is being run in a lot of different places. But like you pointed out earlier, if you're in a small place, then the impact is much greater. You have these DAs and people who get in these positions and are in there for generations. Like in the movie, she was saying, this is the same DA that's been doing this stuff since I was a child.
Yeah.
So she's seen it before. So was this a good movie to you?
Yeah, I think for the time, right, around 2008, right, and where you are in your political education, right,
Mm-hmm.
I think determines that. So I don't think that we really got before this time movies about these specific issues. And I think there's 5, right? The issue of informants, at least 5. The issue of plea deals, the issue of housing and convictions, right? The issues of convictions and how it relates to CPS and your kids, right? And the issues of the power and corruption of DA and law enforcement.
Yes. What was going on in the world in 2000 when this was taking place? And so a lot of things changed after 2001 with the big event that went on in this nation. But prior to that, you know, a lot of the focus of law enforcement was with, you know, doing drug arrests and stuff like that. Then it kind of shifted to other things that resulted from what happened in 2001. But they showed a lot about George W. Bush and the campaign for president.
And Al Gore, yeah.
And with him and Al Gore.
Right, because, you know, there was questions about who actually won, and that went up to the Supreme Court, and there was a lot of back and forth. And so that was the huge issue of the day until, you know, September.
Right. How was the acting in the movie to you?
The act? I think it was good.
I do too.
But they always overdo it when they got to have a bad black man or a bad black woman. It's always overdone. This exhibit, and I don't think he was just great. And his woman, wife, whatever that lady was, right? They just got to be just
ridiculous.
Crazy stereotypes, right? Just caricatures of something.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that relationship in a little while, but it was like,
it was just overdone. And why can't you have a character we know they're bad simply because of the things they do and say, right? They don't have to be extra for me to know that I should maybe view this character negatively.
So the plot, do you think the way that the plot is kind of like what they craft for the movie, but since it was a true story, what happened is what happened, but how they position it in an orderly fashion and what aspects of this story they choose to focus on, you know, comes into play when we look at the plot for a movie that is like this film based on a true story. I think that the plot was pretty good because they did a really good job of balancing the impact of the incarceration or, you know, what happened with this false accusation, the impact on her family. You saw what happened with her children. You saw what happened with her mother. You saw that she didn't have money. And they also did a good job of showing how regular she was. You know, she was just struggling, trying to take care of her 4 kids. And you know, she worked at a diner as a waitress, but she also was involved in doing hair and stuff like that. And she was like, I'm gonna have a little money. I'm gonna enter this hair show so that I can get money to do hair school. And, you know, so she was trying to improve her life for her and her children. And then this thing comes and interrupts everything. And it's not even based on something that was real. So I think how they rolled it out was pretty good. Toward the end, it kind of got, I don't want to say a little predictable because, you know, with these movies, you kind of know or at least feel like they're going to win. But I think it was
what is it about? Like, what is the thing, right? It's that the conclusion is basically that they won this lawsuit. But throughout watching the movie, I don't think it's about this lawsuit that she has and the ACLU has against the district attorney. I don't get that feeling, right? So it's like the story is really about what this woman is going through. And that's never overcome, right? And, you know, art of storytelling is what are my focuses on and what is changing and stuff, right? And I don't know, from basically the deposition room is kind of how that part of the film plays out, which I think is very flat. And
so the thing is, there's the art, right? And then there is the story that needs to be told.
Right.
And that's the thing. So even in any criticism of the art or the way that it is told is certainly not a criticism of the character and her story and the real person behind all of this. You know?
It's just when you're telling this story and it's one of those, kind of a courtroom sort of a thing, right? We got to try to figure out how we going to play this and get information so that we get our outcome. And, this person said this looks bad, but what about this? And then they come out with their evidence, all right? And back and forth like that in a deposition room is okay, but I don't think it captured the impact of this sort of a thing.
Right.
And the weightiness of it too, because it's really confined to a housing project and maybe even a specific apartment in the housing complex, right? Even though at the beginning it kind of opens up with all this big raid of a bunch of people. And really from that, we only got 2 of the people and how their lives were impacted. So I don't think we could really feel the gravity of that. And I'm saying this from somebody who I think that I have a more expansive sort of an education on these things after, even since this movie has come out, right? So this is watching the movie again after, almost 20 years. So I've consumed so much since then.
So let us get into some more pointed parts of the discussion. First thing is, let's talk about the raid, the violent nature of the drug raid that happens at the beginning of the film. And so before this raid happens, we get to see Dee and her daughters, because she has 4 daughters, we get to see them kind of getting ready for what the work day normally looks like for her. She's getting ready for work. She's got 4 girls, hair is all combed, they looking right. They're getting ready to go. And the mother lives in the same complex. So they get dressed and ready, but then they go over to her mother's house, and her mother is played by Alfre Woodard. And so when they go to the mother's house, that's where they spend their day. So then we see the eldest daughter, who looks to be maybe 9, maybe, 8, 9, somewhere in there. She is going to go and, do a little errand or whatever. And so she leaves the apartment, and her 3 sisters and grandmother are still in the apartment. This is the very moment when they decide to do the raid. And she has this glass bowl and she's carrying it across, and then she sees everything going on, and she's completely frozen. And I mean, understandably would be traumatized in that moment. And then when the grandmother hears everything that's going on, she's like, oh my goodness, what is going on out here? And then she goes and she runs outside to get the little girl and protect her. And then, they just kind of bend down because you got these police, coming out like we in a war zone or something. And it's very jarring to see that. And I was like, oh, please say they're not gonna shoot the baby. When you're seeing that, it just is like, why is it okay to traumatize everybody there because you looking for a couple folk? And then we find that most of the people that they sweeping up aren't even guilty, aren't even guilty, or many of them couldn't be. And at one point in the film, didn't somebody say that we needed 3 more names or something like that? 5 more names.
Right. So the character, Anthony Mackie's character, right, who was the informant who basically they used, that was that, he's like, yeah, we just needed 5 more names. And that's basically how Dee's name got on here.
So in other words, we were just gonna lie.
The thing is that sort of situation is what happened with, I believe, Breonna Taylor, where basically the law enforcement or whoever can just claim that, okay, an informant told us this and that's how we got the information and that's why we at these places and blah, blah, blah. And they're working off of a lot of times fake information and getting warrants signed that they shouldn't be able to get signed.
Right. Let us also now talk about how Dee's mother and other people wanted her to plead guilty. Okay. So Dee's mother constantly is saying, she like, you got children to take care of. You need to get out. All you got to do is plead guilty. And Dee is like, I didn't do it. Yeah. I'm not pleading guilty.
Yeah. So what they did, they offered basically no jail time and like 10 years probation.
Suspended sentence.
Yeah, probably.
And yeah.
So, and that's what they do for a lot of so-called first-time offenders, right? Your first offense, even though you might not have done it. So then they make it easy, right? But then that's where you get those other things of now you're a convicted felon and now you got these other things. And if you live, if you're under the housing authority, then you basically lose your vouchers if you're on Section 8 and things like that, right? So then you can't get any of those benefits or like your food stamps and those sort of issues.
And can't vote.
Yeah.
A lot of things you're giving up. But when she first is taken to the jail cell, she's there with people who she knows. And you kind of watching them, drop off one by one. And there's one lady who was in there. And then she was like, I took the deal. I'm sorry. I just couldn't stand with you guys and whatever. And what winds up also happening is later in the movie, when the charges get dropped against the people who still have charges, they ask the DA, well, what are you going to do about the people who were accused and took deals? And he was like, well, they guilty.
Yeah, if they plead guilty, then they're guilty, right?
You know.
And that's how a lot of people tend to think, right? Oh, well, if you're not guilty, then don't plead guilty, when it's really just a game of putting somebody's back against the wall and forcing them to plead guilty.
Right.
Whether they did it or not.
Right. Now, this is not, and I want to be absolutely clear, because there'll be people who will be like, well, you know, you act like people not out there. Well, then who doing the killings? Who doing the this? Who dealing the drug? We know that there are people who do it, but not everybody who has a conviction, not everybody who is caught up is part of, you know, some greater, you know, conspiracy of these things, or even they're not doing it. They're innocent. This woman is just trying to take care of her children.
Yeah. And there are many cases where it happens. So.
Yes. And in the movie, another thing I just want to add too about this DA was that they got his wife and his daughter to come in and say he was using the N-word and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And how he didn't like black folks. And, you know, because the whole thing was, it's going to be hard to prove racial bias in this situation.
Yeah, so that's when I was talking about the plot or whatever, that's part of the issue they had to deal with. And I don't know, we've done a lot of videos, and I alluded to it in something where I was talking about proving someone's mind state, because, you know, these sort of issues of whether or not they are really a racist or not. So, yeah, that's a big thing. And, you know, they asked the question because they're trying to guide us along. So how do you prove it? You know, you look at their stats or whatever, the fruits of your labor, right, can point to some sort of a bias. But just like we saw with Mark Furman and stuff, if you just got tapes, or if you got people who are close to you, as close, like in this case of American Violet, his ex-wife and his daughter, then, you know, that's one thing. But then they got him to blurt out, like we do in movies, and, you know, I don't know if these actually happened because, of course, it's a fictional film, blurting out the fact that, you know, you basically hate black people, right? And then one of their tactics was, hey, let's use the young black attorney to question someone, because we know when these guys get, you know, to be questioned by people who they think are inferior, then they lose it.
Yeah.
They can't handle
And that's
that.
what happened in here too.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is how Dee lost her job once she bonded out. You know, and the woman, so here's the thing. You have this very sympathetic type of character who is the owner of the diner where she works, right? And so even when Dee, because they went up in her job and arrested her because Dee wasn't home when they did the raid. So here it comes to, you know, these cops busting up in her job as she's serving coffee at the diner. And they're like, you know, are you Dee? Blah, blah, blah. And then they just take it. She's like, what is it? And she's thinking it's her parking tickets because she got $700 and something in parking tickets at this point. And the lady who is the owner of the diner is like, hey, I'll pay her parking tickets. And they're like, get back, lady. You know, just being overly ridiculous. And so when Dee is bonded out after her mother manages to come up with the money for her bail after she has gotten it reduced because she had to go take this petition around to everybody, then Dee is like thinking, okay, I got my job. Let me just go back to my job. And she's like, look, you know, and she hands her some money. The owner hands her some money. She said, look, you know, they came up in here and they raided this place. And, you know, I guess she had a couple of undocumented workers who were working in the back and they took them, you know. Or
they just start questioning them because they are law enforcement and everyone is suspicious, even if they're not undocumented, right? You go in and then you start questioning the workers and just making the work environment bad.
Hostile and terrible. So that's what happened. And she was like, look, you done brought the smoke over here. You know, I can't take the heat that you're bringing. And I'm just, you know, I can't have you here. So in other words, she's just like, I can't do this because this is a business and I got to survive. I love you. You're a wonderful person. And she does give her money, but, you know, it's probably what she could have. You know. But
if they were going all the way in, they would have just had it where the job is just like, well, you got arrested. You can't work here. Kind of like with the housing authority and those sorts of things and Section 8 and stuff. It's like you're accused of something. You know, a lot of times, once you're arrested, that's it.
The accusation alone.
You got law enforcement involved, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so, but, you know, that adds a little more dynamics to the story when it's like, all right, so she could have kept her job, but they even made it hard on the employer, right? So it's like it's affecting other elements of the community that you aren't intended to affect, right? You only want to affect these black people, but now you're affecting the white small business owner too.
Yes.
With your shenanigans.
Yes.
Right? Recent changes here on this platform are making it harder for you to see our latest videos and get notifications. To make sure you don't miss out on anything, we're building our own community, both on our website, axiom.app, and on Patreon with free and paid options available.
Here's the deal. While you can still watch our videos on YouTube, much of our current catalog and many of our upcoming videos will become unlisted and only accessible to our Patreon, axiom.app, and YouTube channel members. We'll be posting links to these unlisted videos directly on Patreon and axiom.app, so you'll be the first to see them, if you're a member.
If you choose the free Patreon option, you will still get access to some exclusive content like watch parties where we watch movies together and give the commentary and other special videos. But premium paid members will get full access to all of our exclusive content. No new account is needed to join our Patreon. Just log in with your existing social media account.
While some of you may find this announcement disappointing, don't worry. We have no plans to leave YouTube at this point, but you guys are our cousins and our tribe, and we refuse to let platform changes tear us apart. So help us stay connected. Join us on Patreon today at patreon.com/axiomamnesia. You can check the links down below or in the comments.
So then we got Exhibit, who plays Dee's baby daddy, and when she's locked up, he go and get the kids from the grandmother, and he's like, yeah.
Not all of them, though. Just the youngest two. His two.
Kids. And then, you know, he's a terrible father, I guess.
You know, it's so hard to say. Okay. So he's, how do you say?
So the way they make him bad is that they say his girlfriend has done stuff to kids, right?
And is convicted of it.
Right. But what I see in the movie is the mother is locked up. So a father goes and picks them up and basically assumes custody of them to take care of his kids. And he seems like a guy who works and all this, and she could appear to be somebody who's involved in drugs.
Right.
And that's how he could possibly, but then they say, okay, his baby mama or his girlfriend who lives with him is a terrible person. So by proxy, he's a terrible person. So and Dee starts to go off on him and all sorts of stuff, right?
Well, look at what happens when it happens and she's locked up. What does he actually do? He comes over. He's like, I'm coming to get my kids. And then the mother is just like, okay, but you know she got custody. He said, well, I mean, she locked up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So like, does the complete deadbeat come to get his children when the mother is locked up,
right,
when they're
being cared for? And I think that's kind of what you would expect. Like, okay, one of the parents is locked up, so the other one is like, yeah, let me go pick the kids up. Not just to assume that the woman's mother would just take care of your kid in a situation like that.
Exactly. You know, so there's that piece. And then to complicate matters, we don't know at the time why she doesn't like, we presume, right, that there's just baby mama drama and with the new girlfriend, like that dynamic. We don't know that the girlfriend is a convicted offender and that is why she doesn't want her children over there with the father, but who is living with this woman, right? And so when all of that comes out, we're just left to go, okay, wow, this is crazy. So she goes over there to get her children from there, and he won't give the children up, and she goes berserk. She started messing up his vehicle and stuff like that, and she winds up getting arrested. So now you just bailed out because of something you didn't actually do, and now you went berserk because your children are over there, you know?
Right. So then then we have this whole custody battle sort of a thing that's going on, right? Send CPS to her home, right, because of all that's going on, and she's trying to sue. So then she has a hearing in front of the DA, and she's like arguing that my kids have to be with me. They can't be with the father because of this woman who was convicted of doing stuff to kids, right? So then the DA is like, well, seems like maybe the kids shouldn't be in any of your custody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And just trying to use all this against you in every argument you have. And that's how those DAs act, right? Any little thing you try to bring up, they're going to try to use it against you. That's why you need an attorney and people to represent you in that way, right? Because they can't just pull that on everyone.
Right.
Because they know the responses and what the proper law is.
How do we feel about the baby daddy, though? Like, completely. Like, with all things considered.
It's a tough one because... we don't know the nature of old girl's crimes and if that's even true, right? Because it could be a hood rumor. Just because she said it don't mean that was the case. And it's sort of like, okay, if you have a situation where a dude was, I don't know, 24 and girl was 17 and then they later got married and they've been married for 10 years and then they bring up, oh, he's a convicted whatever. Then you take that in consideration differently than someone who was messing with somebody who's way younger.
Yeah.
You know what
like
I'm saying?
A child.
Yeah, like a child. So, but it's his attachment to her, even knowing that and bringing his kids around. And I say that to say, like, the nature to know that would it be wrong to have your kids knowingly around this person?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Right. And it's different if she's doing this to little kids versus somebody who wasn't.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. And
so, but it's still only based on his attachment to that person is whether or not he's good or bad.
I think it was kind of obvious that,
But he also didn't want to give the kids up once she returned. And you open the door and you have the conversation, I guess. But then I think he was, later on, he actually did put hands on her.
And why was he being so difficult? Like, was this how it always was? Was he always being difficult this way? I just have a lot of questions about that. And that's not really what the movie is about. It wasn't part of the
true story.
But yeah, but that's not really what the movie was about. But it informs like why she's like, I got to get out. It informs why the pressure would have been even greater if you know your kids are over here with possibly in danger in your mind, or maybe for real, right? That you may need to pay the price to get on out of there. Okay, let me go ahead and sign this plea because I can't have my kids be with these people. But I just go back to, why did he go pick up the kids? Just to spite her? And then, but when the mother comes, or the kid's grandmother, when Alfred Woodard's character comes to pick them up for church, the kids, are looking disheveled and whatever. And on top of that, the father is like, when they get ready to leave, he's like, I'll let you know when I want to get, I'll come back and
I'll let you know when I want to see him again.
I mean, what? Like, okay, great Father of the Year award. See, here's the thing also. We normalize many parental relationships that, I mean, from my personal point of view, are unacceptable. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it's unacceptable for you not to be just a part of your child's life, whether you with the mother or not. To me, that's unacceptable. To me, it's unacceptable to think that you could just pay money and that means you taking care of your kids and you don't spend quality time with them. So it just depends. It goes back to one of the videos that we were talking about where you were like, it depends. Oh, it was Devil with a Blue Dress. It depends on how you interpret the act itself, what you were doing. In that case, we were talking about, Denzel's character sleeping with a guy who was an acquaintance, his woman, how you feel about that act. In this case, it's how do you feel about just this setup in general? And part of the setup can indict the mother who is innocent.
Right. And that's what the DA brought up, right? Or one of the lawyers who were questioning her during deposition, basically like, so how many baby fathers do you have, right?
Making jokes and just talking crazy.
Yeah. But those are things that we all do. Right? So it's not like we're all just very perfect
mindful
in that sense.
Yeah. No.
We all have those
But the
things.
difference too is that he did it in a depth, like in a court of law, if you will.
Oh yeah.
On the record he did it. And he was fine with doing it and fine with, how he was
and he was using that so that they could continue to misuse and abuse black people.
Yeah.
Right? He was defending those actions of locking innocent people up for no reason.
And it's just the sad part.
Yeah.
So the toll on the children, let us talk about that now. So she had 4 kids and, and they all were like, seemed about 9 and under, 8 and under, somewhere in there. But the oldest daughter, she started reminding me of Troy from Crooklyn, because you see the eldest daughter like acting like a grown woman. She's like, okay, come on, we got to do this. We got to do like she is, and I just hate I don't know what that. One of y'all in the comments tell me, but I think it's something like parentification or something of. Or adultification
very young, 'cause she's like
of
very
young girls
young.
like this. You do not have children, but you over here operating as children, and then
even though she had a grandmother
adults.
and things, right?
Yes.
But I guess she was at the father's house,
and she would probably also because that wasn't her father, so she would probably also be doing that because they might be home alone a lot, like, so the grandmother is across the way, she's there managing, and then if something happened, the grandma is right there, run get grandma. We look at situations and say, how do you wind up in a circumstance where you have these 4 kids, they're all young, and you really not in a position to take care of them. Now that you have all 4, you're trying to figure out what to do to get out the hole, and I applaud that. But what about the effect on the children along the way? You got this little girl who is operating like she had babies,
right,
and is taking care of them.
But at the same time, it's like, all right, now we're in this position, so now isn't the time to, what they say, now isn't the time to teach to fish or something. I don't know. When
you starve and you can't teach me how to fish right now, or whatever it is, like, don't be trying to go into a lecture when right now the help is needed. And
exactly. Like, well, she already got the kids and stuff. Don't be like, well, you should have thought of this before. All right, but what about the kids right now?
Right. What
the
about
kids
the effect
ain't had to think about nothing until right now. That ain't their decisions.
And that's the piece I think that's the most unfortunate about it, is that these officials who do stuff to the parents don't think about the effect on the children, don't care about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. They think about it. They want to cause havoc.
You don't care. And so when we talk about other stuff, like, because this is connected to all of this, we talk about the 1980s crime bills and things like that, and we say it over and over again.
The war on drugs,
that war on drugs. And if you watched, listen, y'all need to go watch our video if you are a Patreon member on or a channel member here on YouTube. You need to watch our video on Black Dynamite, because we talk about the war and who started that war, Richard Nixon, all of these things. We give you the little nuggets of the history so that you can kind of put it in context, because we're only seeing things at the very moment. And if you don't know what happened before, then putting that in context, you could just look at people and say, oh, well, this person is a wonderful person because you're seeing them old and docile. But when they were young, they were getting busy and doing stuff to people who didn't deserve it, and making people's lives miserable.
Yeah.
So just consider all of that. So anyway, that's what's going on. But we got the toll on these babies. What are we going to do about them? How can we help them? And, it's like this movie was a win in the sense of, what happened with her was a win.
Yeah. But I think the movie does cover what we didn't see in a lot of movies, or maybe
of this nature
in no movies for a long time.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we watched the movie, and I feel like this is a film. I remember the name and thought I had seen it, but I realized after I watched it that I hadn't seen it.
Why is it called American Violet?
Bruh.
Spring that out of nowhere. What is the violet? I don't know what the violet is. All I think of is the color purple.
This is a good question. And I also want to just mention that this was the true story of Regina Kelly that was told in here, in her in the town of Hearne, Texas. So if you want to know more about her, you'll be able to go and research and find out a little bit more about her specific story. But we're talking about why did they call it American Violet? So maybe the reason that they call it American Violet is because violet flowers are considered, a sign of modesty and humility, and maybe even a sign of innocence. And I mean, so she is like a flower, like
she's an innocent woman.
She's an innocent woman, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And they're also, though, violets are symbolic of things like faith and inspiration and all of that, spiritual passion. All of that was required for her to take this battle on, when even her own mama didn't want her to. Her mother was like, just go on and plead. And she said it multiple times in the film. So
yeah.
That could be why
So
it's
you
called
brought
that.
up Hearn, that place. So if you remember, had the story of the police who shot a 93-year-old woman.
Vaguely.
Yeah, that's where that happened. So one of the things in the idea, I think the very end of the film is like, do you think it's going to basically be changed, right? Because that's the idea of having these lawsuits against these places, is that it deters these actions. But now about 10 years after the lawsuit settlement, then we get something like that, when I don't think it's probably no reason to ever shoot a 93-year-old woman.
None whatsoever. Know someone who's obsessed with movies? Surprise them with the ultimate gift, a personalized 30-minute Axiom Amnesia deep dive on demand on their favorite film. For just $50, they'll get exclusive insights and see their name as executive producer. Get yours today at axiom.app. So, this is a film that is heavy in its subject matter, but I think it was delivered well and presented well, especially for the time where this wasn't on everybody's mind in 2008 in this same way, because we saw a lot start to happen after 2012 with what happened with Trayvon Martin, right?
Yeah.
And just, all of that and people being up in arms. But 2008, it wasn't nearly as much on the national radar.
Right.
So,
and, we had Obama running at the time.
yes.
So, different time, but.
So we want to thank the executive producer, Brian B31, for bringing this film to our attention with the Deep Dive on Demand program here at Axiom Amnesia. We thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you made it this far, type "not the babies" in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around.
And be sure to check out one of the videos that's on the screen right now. And also go to axiom.app. That's where you'll find all of our recent videos from all of our channels in one place. You'll be able to click on the thumbnail and then select it and watch it here on YouTube. Also, check down below because you guys can see that we have merch now. It's displayed below the video.